Hi, everyone. I'm Staci, a compulsive eater from Los Angeles, California. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day off the gray sheet. I write my meals down. I commit them to my sponsor. I do not eat in between my meals, no matter what. And abstinence is most important in my life today without exception. And my abstinence date is July 1st, 2017. And thank you to Kim for asking me to qualify today. By way of background, I'm 5'1", and since college, I'm 51 years old. And since college, I've gone up and down 25 to 35 pounds from violent binging and restricting in all different types of ways. And when I say my abstinence date as July 1st, 2017, what that means to me is that since that date, I have been 100% honest about everything surrounding the food. And I've made no independent food decisions. And I love how one of our mottos is it's not a program for people who, what does it say? People who want it or people who I have it written down. It's not a program for people who want it or even need it. It's a program for people who do it. So I believe it's a program of action, and I can only stay abstinent one day at a time by working my program of action. So what it used to be like is I grew up in what I perceive to be a very loving home in Southern California. I I always had a very like idiosyncratic relationship with food. My first time I went into anaphylactic shock, I was 2. And so as soon as I could learn to read, I was reading ingredients in food, and I was bringing my food places to the birthday parties and everything else. And I just felt very different when it came to food and eating. And so much so, well, there's that. And then there's also the fact that I grew up with a mother who was constantly obsessed with her weight and with eating and would go up and down 50 pounds on a 4'11" frame. And I grew up with diabetes, and I didn't know I had diabetes at the time until I was 32. So I would eat and get these insatiable cravings for more from a very young age because I couldn't process the insulin. I also think I just came out the chute a compulsive eater. So I don't know how, like, what caused me to get to where I am today as far as why I need the program. I just know that I need it, and this is a solution for me. Um, when I was in middle school and high school is when I first started to notice that I was different than other people. And other people noticed that I was different from them when it came to food. I've shared this before, but in my yearbook, it says, I can't remember when Staci wasn't eating or talking about food. And that's because I constantly was. That's really all that went through my head 24/7 were just constant food thoughts. And how do I get more? And I wasn't concerned about hiding it then. I just needed more. And I was thin at the time. And so I think that people felt more freely to talk about it. And my first car that I totaled from food was I was about 17, and I was in a car with 5 girls, and I hit a car that hit a car when I just went down to grab something that we don't eat and eat it. And that was the first car out of 3 having to do with food. I, when I got to college is when I started gaining the weight, and that's because I wasn't exercising as much like in high school. And that's when I started all the different things that I did to try to eat and maintain a weight.
What?
Thank you. So I have a list. I did like restricting, slim fast, chewing food and spitting it out, over exercising, overuse of laxatives, Weight Watchers. I'm a lifetime member. South Beach, Dexatrim. Then I went on to the prescription medications like phentermine, hypnosis, and then shooting myself up in the stomach with my diabetes medicine so I can binge and not gain weight. There are so many different stories over all this time, but just so you know, I mean, I graduated from the eating out of the house trash and putting soap around it and then eating it still and then putting it outside on the side of the house and then tipping over the trash can and crawling into it in my business suit and scraping off the bottom of the outside trash can. Gets lifted up by the trash trucks. It didn't matter. I just needed it. I didn't care. At this point, I was diabetic and I had a monitor monitoring my sugars inside, like right under the skin. And it would show sugars from 30 going to 300, 400, back down to 30. And it just didn't matter. I just needed to get the food. And I was always like my eyes really heavy and sleeping a lot and trying to manage a household with a busy spouse and kids and a job as a lawyer and all of that and not
everything she has to say. She completely.
Oh, can you hear me okay? Okay. And not being able to control myself when it came to food. And it was baffling because I appear normal in so many other areas. Like I could take the bar and pass it. I could graduate college and law school and be successful at work, whatever that means. But it just got worse and worse and worse. And I think it's because we have a progressive disease. And because I'm being recorded, I won't talk about like the worst of the worst of the worst. But I mean, there were times where I just really couldn't function at work because I would just eat and sleep. So, what happened to change me is I said to my therapist, I had been in therapy for 10 years, never talked about the food. And I was 32 and I said, I I think I have a problem with food. And I told him what I was doing. And he said, yeah, you think? And he told me about CEA How. And I started CEA How on October 16th, 2008. And for most of a decade, I was abstinent from sugar and flour and certain grains and weighed and measured at home. But at a restaurant, I didn't have to because it was something that you could do with exception. And it really worked for me until it stopped working because I was going out to eat about 7 days a week, getting huge quantities of grains that we can't eat in gray sheet. And it's like my disease had a vacation at a restaurant. I mean, that's really what it was like. And it's so interesting because when I came into Gray Sheet, and I'll tell you a moment how I found it, but when I came into Gray Sheet, even though I hadn't had sugar or flour in my system for almost a decade, I lost 12 pounds right away. And that's just from the quantity. So one day I was at this event and I saw this woman who used to be in CEA How, and she was putting fruit on a scale and we were out. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she said, I eat 3 delicious guilt-free meals a day with nothing in between but black coffee, tea, and diet soda. And I'm like, okay, take me to your leader. So she took me to the Grove in Los Angeles. And I said to her on the way, I said, I eat 6 meals a day because I'm diabetic and that's what I'm supposed to do. And she said, okay, well, you can do that. You can't do that in Gray Sheet, but you can do that. How's it working for you? And I decided that I could try anything for 90 days. So for 90 days, I would be 100% honest about what I ate. I would surrender entirely to the program. If fruit had fuzz or didn't have fuzz, I wasn't going to ask why. I would do what my sponsor told me, and that I was going to be a total newcomer. pretending I just knew nothing about anything because self-knowledge avails me nothing and I don't know anything. So I went to the meeting and I got a sponsor right away. And I really made that commitment. And after 90 days, I remember I was
10 minutes.
is that five more? Okay. So I was sitting in the chair at the Grove and I thought, I said aloud, there's nowhere I would rather be than my blank in this chair. And I meant it. And someone very wise in this program had, taught me because I was listening at a meeting, it's too late to start weaving the safety net once you're already falling. So I really believe that I cannot rely on yesterday's recovery for today's abstinence. So there are things that I do on a daily basis in order to stay abstinent. And first of all, I sponsor, which is really the greatest gift for me. I'm sponsored. I go to at least one Zoom meeting a day. Um, I pray, I meditate, I do service, but it's really just, I heard someone say at a meeting, and this is the thing, when I don't have a unique thought in my head when it comes to anything gray sheet. It's because I listen at meetings and I hear other people and that it's not like a cultish type thing. It's just that like I need that language. I need to know that if I'm making my food and a thought comes into my head that says, should I call my sponsor about that? That means I should call my sponsor about that. Or, I'm not responsible for my first thought, but I'm responsible for my subsequent actions, like things that I've learned at meetings that are helpful to me. And, you know, abstinence, as y'all know, it doesn't promise me anything other than abstinence. And so no matter what has happened, when I started in Gray Sheet in 2017, I had a kid in middle school, a kid in high school. My parents were married. My best friend was alive. My we had never had a pandemic. I hadn't moved. There were all these things. So I had all my parts, my in my body, like all these things that have changed. My parents divorced after 47 years. My father died. My closest friend died. My sister-in-law died. Um, I've traveled internationally. My son went to high school, is now in college. My daughter went to college, is now in graduate school. I'm an empty nester. My work is different. What is similar, what is the same for me every day and is predictable is that I weigh and measure my 3 committed meals and eat them. That's the only thing I know that's going to happen in a day. And I know that that's going to happen in a day as long as I work my spiritual program of action. And I'm just going to say aloud because I know that she so appreciated this meeting and did service for this meeting is I miss Nan every day. She was my first sponsor. I love her very much. She died in January. I can't believe it's been almost a year. And that was, another no matter what for me and a lot of people in this program. And I just am so grateful to her. And I'll be honest, when I weigh my food and it pops up 4.0, thank you, Ifeinwa, like 4.0 or 8.0 right away. It's like, thanks, Nan. So anyway, I love her and I miss her. And I'm so grateful for all of you for my abstinence and I pass.